Welcome to Minds in Motion with Dr. K, where we delve into the lives of high-performing leaders who are shaping the world. And today I have a special guest with me, none other than Caroleen Azar, calling in all the way from Toronto, Canada. Caroleen was born in Baghdad, Iraq, to Christian parents. She was raised in Toronto, Canada. She's a CPA, a qualified chartered professional accountant with 15 plus years of experience in her field. She's passionate about enhancing corporate governance, and she finds joy in traveling and learning about different cultures and background. So welcome, Caroleen, to Minds in Motion with Dr. K. I'm so happy that you said yes to this opportunity to come where we can have a discussion and do this interview today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure being here.
So, Caroleen, can you share a bit about your background and your leadership journey that brought you up to this point in leadership?
From a background, as you introduced me, I was born in Baghdad to a Christian family. So I grew up there, I was there until I was like 8 years old. I went to school for a few years, but as I journeyed through life, one of the biggest things I remember in Baghdad was my family and I lived through a war. So we lived through the 90s war, the early 90s with the Iraq and Kuwait. And so as a child, I didn't really understand what it meant being in a war. I just thought it was a fun thing, not having to go to school. And what my parents ended up doing with my uncles and their families is we left Baghdad because we were in the center of Baghdad. And we ended up renting a small place, like a room where we all slept in the same room on the floor. And we had a kitchen and we had a bathroom and we shared it among like over 35 people. And so that journey that I went through, didn't get it. I didn't understand what it meant. I thought that was the norm. And so as I journeyed through life and I look now back, that wasn't normal. That's not how a child should grow up in a war zone. Through that journey, my parents didn't see life to be safe for girls because we're five. The youngest out of five. I have one brother and we're three sisters that are older, so we're five altogether. So it didn't seem safe for my parents to keep girls in Baghdad and Iraq through the war in safety. So we journeyed to Turkey. We went to Istanbul, went through Jordan and went to Istanbul, and we lived as immigrants there, but we lived as illegal immigrants. So what does that mean? We got our visa got expired, and we just couldn't afford to be renewing our visa. It just didn't make sense. And so my parents had to find a way of living there. And we had to blend in that culture, in that way of living, because if we were caught and we couldn't speak or we didn't fit in, they would deport us. So we lived through that journey for a year and a half, and it wasn't an easy journey financially, stability. We got rejected to Canada first round. And so eventually we ended up moving to Canada. As I moved to Canada, I was in elementary school. And I remember this so clearly. I was bullied as a kid because I couldn't speak English. English wasn't my first language. And I wasn't like the other kids. I was different. I had dark features. I dressed differently. So I was bullied. What did that mean? Kids would hit me, throw snowballs at me, during the winter. And I just hated school. But what I could do well is I was pretty good at math. I excelled in math in the classroom. I was put in ESL, English as a second language. And those hardships, and I just couldn't express my feelings because it got close to where kids were accusing me of doing things and I didn't do. I was determined to learn English. That was my thing. The only thing I wanted to do is learn English so I can speak, defend myself, and express how I feel. I made it a goal within 6 months that I could speak, and I was able to. So I started speaking English in that first year after 6 months, and I was removed from ESL in my first year after first year of completion. So through that journey, as I graduated from elementary school, I ended up getting all these awards, for math, for English, for excelling in school. So, my journey as a child wasn't easy. But I learned, to work through it, to be resilient as a child, not to give up. And my journey, there's two things that have kept me as a child, not to give up. And now I look back and I understand what it was. Number one was my parents, because I knew the hardships that my parents went through to bring me to a country like Canada. So I
Mm.
didn't want to disappoint them. I wanted to make sure I make them proud. And then the second was, I've always had that faith, having God in my life. So to me, that made that journey easier. Though those were the two things that were primary in my life as a child growing up, made things easier to journey it. Um, as a leader right now, I mean, if I look forward into my journey, some of the challenges we face as a leader, I face as a leader, is there's still in today's world gender bias. Whether we like it or not, maybe we don't speak about it, but it exists. What does that mean? We're still seen as women, at least, I'm still seen that we're less capable of delivering. For example, I'll give you from my past own journey. I've been leading a team, or I've led a team. I've had more experience and skills in a certain area. I could have a colleague who joins in new, that's not leading a team, and they're getting paid higher than I am.
Mm.
So there's been that experience in my journey as a leader. I've always had to put my hand up for every difficult project, for every anything that sets me apart, any opportunity that I get, so I can be in front of executives, just so I can stand out. I can set those skills so that nobody can forget about me as a leader. Those are just some of the, I would say, gender biases that I've noticed in my own. There is another thing that I think about. We talk about work-life balance. I don't have children right now, but I think about this because I've seen other women that have children. As I move forward in my career and I seek an executive role, will that set me back if I decide to raise a family? How will that journey look like? All of these things we think through, and I think through as a leader.
Yeah. That's such a huge challenge in the corporate arena right now. And it's sad, right? A sad commentary that here we are in 2024 and we still dealing with these type of biases, right? Still as females in the corporate arena,
Mhm.
still having to fight to be seen, still having to fight to, as they say, break through that elusive glass ceiling to get to where we need to be or where we aspire to be. But I have to say, I applaud you for your resilience, because a lot of women could back down from that and say, you know what, I give up. But I would like to, I'm wanting to say that resilience was like, it's a built-in mechanism in you, because as you share your earlier childhood story, even though you didn't quite understand, but there was so much resilience that had to happen for you and your family to move through the phases to where you are right now. So I think even though it may seem difficult and disruptive,
Mhm.
for want of a better word, but you still persevere because of that determination and that grit to achieve what you set out to achieve. What do you believe are some key skills and qualities women leaders need to cultivate in order to thrive in today's corporate landscape?
There's so many, but I would say, like, going back to the first point is being resilient. So, uh, sometimes there are times in my journey I've I fell. I fell a few times. I've had seasons where I fell quite a few times, more than other seasons. And the journey is difficult. So being resilient is key. Sometimes there's times where I'm able to get up on my knees and I need to take maybe a day or a few days to be able to get up on my feet. So, sometimes you take a step forward and then you feel like you're taking two steps back. But being able to do so, continually moving forward, is the key. Being resilient is such a key. Learning from your failures, learning from your setbacks, and then getting up, saying, okay, I've learned, now I need to carry forward. So that is the key in the corporate world, being a leader, being a woman. I would say being a strategic thinker, thinking outside the box. It's not enough to think about your team, what your team needs, what you need to do. Thinking that enterprise leader, how does my activities, what I need to do, aligns with the company's strategic objectives? Thinking through that is the key. Thinking outside the box, seeing the big picture. I'd say continuous learning, seeking that feedback, the development. Those are just opportunities, and to seek feedback, you got to humble yourself. Sometimes it's not easy asking for that feedback. Sometimes you don't want to hear it. In my journey, I've learned not only do I have to hear it, even if it's not pleasant for me, I need to ensure I hear it, I learn from it, and I action it. So actioning it and showing that to the leader, you're actually actioning it. To me, that's such a key as being a leader, and again, being women in leadership.
You use a word that so many people find it really difficult to put in place: humility.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think your childhood had anything to do with you being able to be humble, in the face of adversity and continue to bounce back?
Yeah, definitely. Um, I was brought in a household where, you're learned to be humble, to be grateful for living, simple as that. So being humble is almost part of my DNA, even though as I grew up here, I became more Canadianized, if anything. But I also I had that foundation. So that foundation in our household, being humble, being grateful, it's the key. This is how we survive. This is how we've learned to survive.
Mm. What advice would you give to young women who are aspiring to be in leadership roles, but they feel discouraged by societal barriers or stereotypes as females?
So, I think, learning to, I'd say being resilient is the key, even though, society, culture, whatever you want to call it, will fail you at times, or, you don't feel like you're getting somewhere. So the resilience is very important. What I, another thing that is key for me, and I'm going to use this, be a little bit biblical. In the Old Testament, my favorite story is Queen Esther. So you have this orphan child, had nothing, no dreams, no hopes, and all of a sudden she becomes the queen. Not only does she become a queen, but saves the nation. So, learning, even if there's nothing or you got nothing, you have to believe in that something, to have that hope, that courage. And that takes a lot of effort, and that builds on, being resilient, having the courage, and believing in yourself. Those are key for me from within. Another thing I say, and it works for me and has worked for me, is finding a leader or a mentor that will help you through that journey. If you had asked me to seek a coach maybe 2 years ago, I would have probably said no. But I've had the opportunity in the over a year or so, having a coach who I have a trust and honest relationship with. I can be honest, I can say what I need to say, seek that feedback, and get that feedback. So having a coach through that journey is key. Somebody you can be honest with and trust, that builds that, inspires women and builds that leadership in women.
It's so important that you mention having a coach, because I think a lot of people still frown on that. Like, I don't need a coach. But even high performing leaders like yourself, as you share, benefit from having that coach because it's more the accountability piece is
Mm-hmm.
helping you to see those blind spots that you would not otherwise see, helping you to understand how are you leveraging or over leveraging or under leveraging your strengths,
Yes.
so that you can become that better leader that you are aspiring to. So for those of you out there who are listening to us today and think having a coach is not a good thing, or you think it's a waste of your time, whether the company invests in you or you invest in yourself, it is so important to know to have a coach to work with you, because like look at the greats, the Michael Jordans of the world, the LeBron James of the world, the Serena
Mm-hmm.
Williams, they all have coaches.
Yeah.
Are they great? They are
Mhm.
great, but yet still what? They still have coaches to take them to the next level, to help them to be more accountable. So thank you for bringing up that point. One of the qualities to grow in leadership is to cultivate that strength as a strong leader is working with a coach to help you go and grow to the next level. And then you as that leader then taking on that coaching mindset so that you can then grow your team, right? So it becomes a domino effect, and it
Yeah.
really helps leadership to be less stressful when you create that coaching environment or that coaching culture within the organization. So how do you envision your legacy as a leader, and what impact do you hope to leave on future generations of women in the workforce? Because I believe you're also a millennial, correct?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what legacy we have? We have the Z's coming behind, and then I heard
Yeah.
the alphas are behind them, right?
Yeah.
So you're still going to be in the millennials are soon going to be like the senior leaders, generation, and then the Z's are coming in, and the alphas are coming in, and who knows what else is coming behind that. So how do you envision your legacy as a leader, and what impact do you hope to leave on that
Mm-hmm.
future generation of women in the workforce?
Yeah, interesting point here. I come from from governance, internal controls, audit world, accounting. I don't want any of the people I'm leading to think about the technical skills they've learned from me, because that's something you'll probably forget over the years. It's the legacy that I look for, is, did I motivate the individual? Did I challenge the individual? Did I encourage the individual to think outside the box? Did I delegate enough to ensure and challenged enough so that they could grow and become better, at what they do, better performers, and be able to take that on and be able to lead their own teams. So it's about those, interpersonal skills, rather than the technical, because the technical you can learn on the job, but the interpersonal is harder to get. And so the legacy I want to, if I were to say the three words, motivating, challenging, and then just encouraging people to think outside the box. And that's what I would want to leave to other individuals, and that who will become leaders in the future.
That is just so true. A lot of organizations now are saying, we can teach you some of those technical things. We can teach
Mm-hmm.
you about the job, but those soft skills, right? That's something, the intangibles is not something that we can teach you. That's something we are expecting that you come in to the
Mm-hmm.
workforce already having that. So to mention wanting to leave that as a legacy, especially with these generations that are coming behind, that's extremely important, because it's something that's a requirement now, more so than, as I say, having all the technical skills, because you can learn those things,
Yeah.
right? But having those intangibles is much more difficult for an organizations to say, hey, we can teach you these things. They're expecting that you would come with those things already intact.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I know millennials are looking for is emotionally intelligent leaders. As a millennial yourself, what
Mm-hmm.
does that mean to you?
Oh, that's been a learning journey for me. This is something I had to learn, through my coach, through that journey. Having, that emotional intelligence means being self-aware for me. Self-awareness of myself, of my emotions, understanding it, and managing it, as well as having the ability to manage the emotions of others. So part of my journey through my coach, I've learned a few things. One of the things I've learned is, having the ability to identify what are my strengths, what are my top 3 or 5. But I've also learned that I have a tendency of over leveraging certain strengths. And so I'm a very compassionate individual. And that might have not served me well in the corporate world. So learning for me that, emotional intelligence, that, the difference between the compassion and the empathy, how can I manage that? And how can I learn to serve, be more, show that empathy versus, the less on the compassion, and set those boundaries. So that to me has been a journey, something that I'm learning still through it, but definitely self-awareness, understanding my emotions, managing it, and managing others. That I would say that's been my journey in learning.
And how important did you find self-awareness showed up for you as a leader?
Oh, definitely important, because I would not think through these things because I wasn't aware of it.
Mhm.
So now I think through. So if I'm leading it if I have a one-on-one with a team member, I prepare to think through how I say it and how I bring it to the table. So this comes from a communication perspective, not only having the ability to communicate, but how does the other individual across from me receive that communication? So that's been the key thing, communication. How is it delivered and how is it received?
So what would you do
Mhm.
if you were dealing with a leader who is not emotionally intelligent, you being high in your emotional intelligence? How do you manage up in that space?
Oh, that's not an easy space, because that space, it requires two people. One is giving, the other taking, and vice versa. I would be, watch what I say in terms of my words, how I present myself. Focus more on the empathy, the self-awareness, versus, the feelings in terms of actioning them. Put that a little bit on the side. That's what I would do. But then I would have to kind of step back and see how they're receiving that, because I need to make sure they're receiving what I'm providing. And if not, then I might have to try another method of delivering it.
Yeah, thank you for answering that, because there's so many leaders who are dealing with that type of a situation, and they're like stuck, like, I don't really know how to manage this, because as you say, it takes a skill. It takes a skill
Mhm.
to be able to manage up. And if the other person is not, is not willing to meet you in the middle, or to reciprocate that same
Yeah.
type of emotional intelligence, is difficult. And so I keep harping on a lot of my I had a whole episode on emotionally intelligent leader, because it's needed. It's
Mhm.
needed in this disruptive era that we are leading in. This generation want emotionally intelligent leaders. They want to make sure leaders, they need to be aware not only of themselves, but of the people that they're leading. They
Mhm.
want to be able to create, again, that psychological safety. I can't speak about that enough. They
Yeah.
want to make sure that they're showing that gratitude and appreciation for their team. And also, leaders who have been leading for a long time, they tend to not to be very inflexible. So being able to have that shift and pivot and have more of an agile mindset. Some people saying, oh, let's work under this agile framework. It's agility is a mindset, right? It's being able to pivot quickly. It's being able to adapt easily and move forward, right? And not stay stuck with that fixed mindset, but attaining that growth mindset. So there's so much shifting that needs to happen now
Mhm.
as leaders are leading in this. It's no longer like that business of you as usual, and the command and control is out the door. Is more of that agility, leading and understanding failure is feedback to do it differently. It's not
Mhm.
punished, right?
Mhm.
It's encouraged, as a matter of fact, because then what was the lesson learned to move you forward? So this is a very, would you say this is a very interesting time to be a leader?
Oh, definitely. It's a challenging time, but I think that those challenges, you can take them as an opportunity, I would say, to learn from it. So to your point, there was a failure, but how can I learn from this failure, this setback, and grow as a person and lead? Mhm.
Yes, yes. They say in every challenge, there's a gift and an opportunity. So even
Yeah.
as the challenges come, like, let's go and look, what's the gift in this? So what's the opportunity in this, as opposed to seeing it as an adversity that I just don't even know how to bounce back from it.
Mhm.
So, there are going to be a lot of millennials and a lot of women. This is going to be Women History Month,
Mhm.
month of March. And so a lot of women are going to be listening to this podcast. So what wisdom, would you want to leave or share with aspiring young leaders like yourself who are listening to this podcast? What wisdom would you want to leave with them?
I'd say stay resilient, develop your emotional intelligence. That's key. It's a learning, it's a journey. You know, you won't learn it overnight. You'll learn it as you journey through your career, as you lead a team. Um, Stay humble. That's key. Seek that feedback. Not only seek it, but action it. And through that journey, just make sure you are humble through it and let others see that in you. I say those are top key things that I've learned and I'm still learning and trying to master as a leader.
Wow. Thank you so much, Caroline, for being on with us today on Minds in Motion. So many wonderful nuggets that you dropped. And as women listen to this podcast in the month of March, I do hope that something that some one of these speakers share will help to propel you in your career and be that catalyst to take you forward, to go and grow, to become the best version of yourself. Because leading as a female in this disruptive era, it takes grit, it takes determination, and most of all, it takes resilience to go forward and to be as impactful as you would like to be. So thank you again for watching Minds in Motion with Dr. K. Please share this podcast with other listeners so that we can get this word out. Remember to be stronger than your excuses, and always, always empower you. We are streaming live on Spotify, on iTunes, on iHeartRadio, and this would also be posted on the YouTube channel. So please go and take a listen and share, share, share. So again, Caroline, thank you so much for being with us on today. And until next time, see you on Minds in Motion with Dr. K.